record on here. So recording. Beautiful. All right, let's get into it. All right, this episode of the Art of the Possible. I'm pretty excited about this one, ladies and gentlemen. We've got the massively intelligent, the great leader herself. We've got Renee Giarrusso on the line. Renee, how are you?
I'm great. How are you going?
I'm going well. I'm going well in COVID. My God, I tell you what, it's nuts. You and I are both in Melbourne, Victoria, and we're bound in lockdown again. How are you coping, first of all?
Yeah, not bad. I must say I've been pretty patient and pivoted and done all the right things. And I think having that little taste of getting out of lockdown and now being back in it has been quite tough. Was quite excited to get back out face to face and press the flesh, but got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, and it did. I mean, I must admit, it is an interesting thing, and I really like that you said two things there. I've been patient and I've been pivoting, and I think that's rolls off your tongue easily, but it doesn't roll off the tongue for everybody. You know, some people haven't been patient. They've been, what's next? What's next? But also, taking time for yourself, having a bit of a think, which is a big point about leadership. To go, okay, what is actually going on? What can I do? What can't I do? What can I control? What can't I control? And then doing the pivot. So I think that's, the two great things you just spoke about then. And of course, I think the challenge for all of us is when you go, by the way, I don't think Victoria is going to be the only state region around the world.
No, I agree with that.
Up and comes back. So I think that I agree with you, that kind of bit where we kind of came out and all of a sudden we did a bit, light at the end of the tunnel. I was looking forward to getting the CBD, just stuff I missed,
I know.
As you did. And then we're like, no, sorry, Rob. Sorry, Renee. You
Get
just
back in
sit
your
back
house.
and get back in your studio. And we were talking about pivoting a second ago. You were just telling me just offline, you were telling me how your house is now turned into some sort of TV studio. It's the same here. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is. And I sort of resisted leaving it set up in my hope. I'm an eternal optimist. So, I was one of the people when COVID hit going, well, we'll be back out there in a week.
Right.
But had to get a bit realistic. So yeah, I've got, obviously where I'm speaking from now is the office where I do a lot of my thinking and this sort of thing. And then we've got our lounge room set up, connected to the TV lights as you have, but you got to do it.
Yeah, you move around, don't you? And I think we've been lucky enough, you and I have worked from home for a long time, so we've kind of understood that stuff for a while. So that wasn't a massive pivot for us, but it's just been the way we've done it. Where we've tended to go out and present and speak, and we're running workshops and the like. Mm-hmm. But I think now we're really saying, hey, this is actually where we present, where we project. And so I think for people like us, and there's going to be more people like us and more leaders like us, you don't have that separation anymore. The office is going to be your presentation, work, thinking time, as you said. So we have to find other spaces, I think anyway. Sometimes even around the house. But we've obviously started to create more spaces around the house. Have you done something like that where you've created other thinking spaces or areas?
I've got 7 workspaces, Rob, and I have had for years. I've worked remotely and I've had an office, but I have worked remotely on and off for nearly 20 years.
Right.
I do, and it's a big thing I believe in as far as productivity and headspace. So my thinking, writing workshops is always done in here. When I'm speaking to clients where I can and I don't need a screen, I always get out for a walk. Cocoon chair in the courtyard, that's where I capture my thoughts and do my writing. And then the kitchen table on Saturdays is where I've been writing my book. So I actually have different places, and I really believe in that whole shifting your physiology and your psychology to anchor certain, types of works and zones, and obviously no work in my bedroom. I know a lot of people working out of their bedrooms. If you have a choice, I say don't do that. You need a center.
I completely agree. I go with the Jimmy Buffett philosophy, which is a change in latitude and a change in attitude. And sometimes the latitude can just be between the kitchen and the lounge room. You need that kind of separation, which used to be cafes. Hey, it was cafes. I went back for like 2 weeks.
I know. I think I had about 900 coffees in that 2 weeks.
Right.
My little Nespresso machine's been getting a workout, let me tell you.
Well, I'm still going out. I've got a few. I know the cafes very well in my local area. I'm really trying to help those guys out. Frankly, I've actually done a few creative Instagram posts. If you've seen my Instagram, which is @RobHardnett, done a couple of creative Instagram posts just to help those guys along, have a bit of fun because they're pivoting as well.
You have to, yeah, I agree.
I'm hoping to get one of them on this show to talk about some of the creative things that he's done. Hey, let's talk about you though. You just weeds it in there beautifully. You talked about the new book coming out. What's the new book going to be called?
The new book launching March 2020 is going to be called The Gift Mindset.
Now, hang on a second. I know you're going completely COVID crazy here. You said you're launching in March 2020, are you?
Yeah, so with deadlines and work, so the book will be finished by the end of July.
So not 221, 220.
No, 221. Did I say 220? See, this year, it's like it hasn't existed. Isn't that
right?
bizarre?
I love that. That's right. I'm wiping these last 4 months off. I'm going pre-COVID. So
yeah, and I launched it 2021. So yeah, Rob, 221.
Yep.
Really excited about the book. We've been releasing bits and pieces of it during this COVID time because a lot of it has relevance. But in a nutshell, it's about embracing challenges and successes, not sweeping them under the rug and forgetting about them, embracing them, being highly aware of them so they're not events, but they become experiences that we can distill down the learnings and share across organisations with loved ones.
Right.
So it's really going to be for anybody that's been through a challenge or had a success, which is most people.
Yes.
And adopting the gift mindset is the key trait of a limitless leader. And I'm a big believer in sharing your lessons that could possibly be someone else's survival guide. I think it's selfish if we don't share.
I completely agree, and I know, and also this time you're using or going through, I should say, the publisher. So you're going through Major Street with Leslie. Yeah, fantastic. So that was Leslie was my last book. It's All Possible was with Leslie. Wonderful to work with, and so that'll be really great. So awesome. So I look forward to that. But I do agree with you that, and I think, frankly, very nice of you too to bring forward some of the content because you can't really leave it now, can you? Because we've had this major shift and people need it now. And so, thank you for putting it out there. Now let's talk about you. Your background, because you came out of FMCG, you seem to have a lot of passion for the FMCG business. Who are you just sort of cut your teeth in terms of leadership, and what was the organisations that had the biggest impression on you back then?
Yeah, well, I was with an amazing, and happy to share, I was with Mars in the snack and then the food division, almost 12 years in very senior leadership, sales and marketing roles and learning roles towards the end. Yeah. And I think what I love about FMCG and food and beverage as a whole is it's innovative, it's cutting edge, they adapt, very fast-paced, creative. And I guess reflecting on that, a lot of traits that I have within me that I love. So there's a synergy there. And I just think, the company I worked for, I can't fault it. It was amazing. It was actually very, very hard to leave and start my own practice, but I just knew I had so much to share, and I wanted to share my experience and my learnings across a lot of industries, not because I was the manager or the leader, but, just for people that wanted it. So that was sort of a turning point.
And in this year, you mentioned that you had a few roles there too. You had sales and marketing distribution. Then you said you kind of, toward the end, was doing learning. I think that's, to me, that's always a great reflection on you, but it's also a great reflection on the organisation that allows their people to grow and to do those various roles. So you didn't have to leave to go and do that change. I think that's fantastic.
No, I didn't. Mars was I look back now, so I've been out, I've had my business for I can't believe it, but 14 years.
Right.
So if I even go back, God, it's getting scary. It's almost, 20, 23 years ago. They were so ahead of the time, Rob. I had a coach at 23 years old, and I was coaching and taught to formally coach, and it was tracked online back then. And, and those people out there listening or watching, when you're in something, you don't always see the gold. And I work with some companies that wouldn't even be near that learning and development, that coach-centric culture as much as Mars had then now. So They had an amazing array of things and platforms you could get on and choose what you needed for your team, get to do a certain amount of development. So, I've always had what I call a bursting mindset since a young age. I love learning, and above all, I love sharing, and I love learning through growing others.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And I came through a lot of that era with HP. I didn't spend as long as you did with Mars, but I was there a good time, and they allowed me to have different roles. They brought me in from Apple basically to shake up the thinking in the division I was brought in for at the time, which was great. And I was also able to do like 3 or 4 roles. But you're exactly right. But I didn't know, like, so many things we did at HP, I thought everyone did. And
That's what I thought. Yes.
Oh my God! To this day, I still work with many organisations like you have, and they're still not doing anything what we were doing back in late 90s, things like that. They were so far ahead of the game, and it came down to me. It came down to leadership. It was always the great leaders, whether they were the family that was there or the culture that was set. I mean, HP, was very much from Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard, who had that environment that they kept putting in there. No doubt Mars was the same. And to keep that culture going for 10, 12, 15, 25 years is incredible.
It is. And there's no excuses. Like, you get, some people will go, well, they're a big company and they must have had budgets. But the world's your oyster now, especially with this virtual world that's been there for years, that suddenly we're all embracing. Yes. I just don't think there's any excuse not to create a learning hub. If you've got 6 people in your business, you can do that.
Yeah.
So
and I think these days, well, you and I were lucky. We've had a growth mindset, so when we got given it, we took it. But what I'm finding today, which I'm excited about, a lot of boomers and Gen X to a certain extent go, all the millennials and Gen Zs, they're so demanding. And I'm like, you know what? They want to be mentored and they want to be coached. I don't know if that's demanding as in, it's actually good, isn't it? I mean, I love working with Gen Z. I love working with millennials so much. I really do,
They're so refreshing. I mean, we do a lot mid to very senior levels, but I've helped with a few grad programs. Get there an hour early to set up. This was in our old life, face to face. Be there already. And I just think, the biggest tip out there, if you've got these Gen Zs and recruiters are saying it is coach, involve, and mentor. They're asking more about that than what they're getting paid. So invest in that, because you can only create future leaders by doing that. Yeah,
well, look, I'm a big believer in, something I learned from John Maxwell a couple of years ago, and he said, the real role of a leader is to create more leaders.
Yeah, totally.
And it's such a simple statement that when you say it, but if you actually, people go, oh, yeah, and I go, no, hang on a second. You're a leader. What do you think that means to you? And then they start to think through and go, okay, let's think about the next hire you make. Are you hiring someone who's going to replace you?
Yeah.
Or are you hiring someone that you can control and is going to say yes to everywhere?
That's right.
One of the fascinating things I find about young companies, and I'm thinking about, I was doing some reading with Atlassian and some of the stuff that Atlassian's done. And one of the key things they do in terms of driving innovative culture as a leader is replace you, right?
And not always you. They don't have to have the same skills and traits as you.
No.
But it's such an interesting point, Rob. I've run a few things of late where I've said, put your hand up if there's the next you in your team. And people, the hand goes down, and you've got to be, and I think this COVID time, I have seen either leaders bury their heads, or the people that are leading self and not teams as yet have been shining stars and stepped up. Yeah. And look, I think that's a great point too, Renee, that, one of the hardest parts of leadership is self-leadership. It's very easy to tell someone what to do, or tell a team even what to do sometimes, but self-leadership is are you leading yourself? Are you actually disciplined and have the processes in place? And then that's typically where you find those people are the ones who do step up. And we do find new leaders come through in all sorts of things, be it political or otherwise,
come through during this time. What when you were coming through your career though, what gave you the kind of passion to say, I'm really fascinated with leadership? Because not everyone is. What sort of gave you the spark for that?
For me, it was leading a team, and I was quite young. I had a national team at one time, and it was I look back now and quite challenging. Rod, there's someone at my door.
Do you want to grab it?
Sorry.
I'll just go. I'll just pause. Okay. Yeah. Just go grab it.
What was the question though?
I'll give you the question. So what, Renee, what sort of gave you the passion for leadership? What was the bit that sparked the kind of, or the time in your life when you decided, hey, this leadership's really interesting? How did you decide to be more passionate about it?
I think when I initially left the corporate world, Rob, I was going to do coaching full time, and I love that, and helping people lead their lives and lead themselves, and having a lot of leadership roles. And I believe everyone's a leader. I just felt doing all this. I did 6 years of sales capability training, as you know. It doesn't matter what you do, you need to be leading. Right. And seeing so many people drowning in a management mindset and not being in that clear, focused leadership mindset, creating future leaders and living their legacy, there was a real need for it. And for me, if people say, what do I do if I had one word, I would say it's all around communication. Leadership's sort of the word that people get. But under that, as you know, we've got probably like 48 different themes and workshops. We don't even use the word leadership in that help you lead. So I think leadership's sort of the end result, and it's the things you do that feed into that and energize you to be the best leader that you can.
Yeah.
Not saying I was ever the most amazing leader, but being able to work with so many people. I'm across 24 industries still to this day. The challenges, as you'd know, the challenges are the same. Yes. People are time poor, they're skill stretched, they don't always have time to work on the people and do what really matters, and above all, I think we've become human doings instead of human beings. And I love being able to get a group to take a step back and not look at self-reflective time as indulgent, and drill down and really reset where they're at and what they need to do.
I think that's a great point too, is we typically, I don't know if it's just Australians or not, but I find we really struggle and feel guilty about taking time to think. Yeah. Right. And it's a concept that I call margin. Margin's a concept I got from, I first heard it from John Maxwell, but I've kind of expanded on it, which is margin is the difference between what you can do and what you are doing. And I find that leaders often are doing the same thing, and that's called burnout. Because if you're doing all you can do is all you can do, you've got no margin in your life. And so I've actually split margin into 2 bits now, which is stuff you have to do as a leader, but that's still stuff. And there's BAU work, and then there's stuff you do as a leader. But then you've got to create another element, which is just that human doing rather than the being rather than doing. Which is really important. It's an extra bit, and don't be guilty about it. And but
to
it's not self-indulgence.
But to your point, I've done a lot of research why the gift mindset matters, and technology, suicide, all these different things. Yeah. And something that did come up is it's something like 84% of businesses globally surveyed think that self-reflection time is indulgent. So if they're creating a culture around that similar belief, I think I call it balanced leadership. And I think I have visualize 3 columns. So the first column is lead people, and that's all the leadership type things. So if you think Batman and Robin, this is Batman. So your workshops, your coaching, your mentoring, your strategic thinking. I have manage activity. So this is more Robin. You're cleaning your house, stuff you have to do all the time. So leading others is progressive, managing activities more maintenance. And that's like your reporting, your meetings, and a lot of the stuff you can let go of. And I always say delegate what you like doing. And then the third column is the self-development column, which obviously the more you do in that on and off the job, the more that will feed into you leading and eliminating that middle column. And I think, leadership, and that's a big can of worms, and managing, what's the difference? They go hand in hand. They're both postures, but I really, really believe if you're in your team and drowning in it, how can you be bringing them up and doing something different with them?
You can't be above it. So yeah, I agree. So leadership gets you going.
Yeah.
Management keeps you going. That's kind of how I like to do it. I think the team thing, the one that really helps though, and what I've seen, I love the 84%, by the way, because then I think 84% of most companies are pretty average anyway. So what are the 16% doing? And it's the 16% are actually creating time, and the 16% are not only creating time for the leaders, but they're actually doing that same thing for their people. So they're modeling the way, saying, I want you guys to give yourself some time, because they're creating new leaders. And so if you do that yourself, then you model it and give it to other people.
Oh, it's even last year there was a bit of a thing. I don't know if you remember, where it's been around a long time, but I just heard of a lot of companies saying we get an hour a fortnight, we're allowed to read at our desk. Do you remember that? Oh. And I walked into, it was an engineering company, and a few were looking and a few were going, God, Renee, what do you reckon of that? And I'm like, yeah, but the key here is the buy-in. So whatever you're reading, make sure it's relevant, whether you're a leader or not, then catch up and share. So we ended up starting this book learning hub. Which is really cool. So it's what you do with it, share it. If you're listening to a great podcast, if you love this podcast, go and share it and talk about it. If you've read a great book or a LinkedIn article or whatever, share it. And I think that's that whole gift mentality. Don't underestimate what other people would love to learn just because you're all over it and you're internalizing it.
I think that's a great point. One of my clients, I'm going to give him a shout out here. It's actually Matt White at Australia Post, has done a great initiative where he's actually brought together a whole bunch of leaders and they're discussing stuff on a weekly basis. And it was such an obvious thing to do, but no one was doing it. No. And it's been such a huge upside. And this was even before COVID. So he was actually realizing
doing that internally?
Yes, internally with the teams, but they're off doing certain things. And it's almost like a coaching book club, but bringing the leaders together, who quite often, what leadership like, can be lonely sometimes, but bringing these guys and girls together once a week to talk about a theme. And that's been a hugely successful thing and such a great initiative that he's put together, and he's taken ownership of it. And he's running, he's in a capability role, but bringing that group together, and they're just feeding off each other and sharing, as you said, that podcast, that TED talk, that Peter IP.
Just makes sense. And look, I run a lot of public things like that where I bring leaders from different businesses together. So if you're not doing it internally, that's I call it cross leadership, where you're leading upwards, sideways and down, and not just in your division but across all. And even right now with these virtual platforms, I think it can actually open that up even more, the opportunity to do that.
Yes, I agree. And in fact, peer, one of the big things I think is people often talk about managing up, managing down, right? I actually think one of the biggest things you can do is managing across, right? With your peers. You'll get far more done. So if you're a leader in sales, how well do you know the guys leading marketing, supply chain, logistics, whatever it happens to be, hitting legal, because at that level, they're your peers and you're probably going to go up or down or around with them. But being able to get shit done, pardon my French, with those guys can cut through so much traction.
And that's where, and I know for me, that's where I found out, I actually like what they do in that division. And I would never have known that. And then I went for a role in that division. So it increases your strategic agility.
Yeah, strategic agility and your collaboration, both internally. Well, we're talking about some leaders sometimes, and you were saying to me that you often come across leaders who have just limiting beliefs, like they just don't think things are possible. How does that happen? How do leaders get limiting beliefs?
Yeah, so limiting beliefs I call dead cats. So you sort of they're just hanging off you and they tie you down and they dictate, how you feel, what you do. Beliefs, as you know, are thoughts. They're things we tell ourselves. And I always talk about, the whole awareness piece. What you think will most likely create how you feel and what you action or you don't. I think the reason a lot of people do have limiting beliefs, and it goes back to something I said earlier around we become human doing. So we don't stop to realise these crappy beliefs we're carrying. Right. So that's one. I think time's another one. But, I always say, especially if I'm doing group or one-on-one work, I always say, what is that belief costing you, your team, and your organisation. So I think that's really, really important.
How do you shift it though, Renee? How do you
Yeah.
if you get someone who's a leader who has limiting beliefs and you can see it, what are a couple of things you suggest that they do?
Yeah, good question. And we do lots on this. So I always say flip the script. So we actually work out, you've got to find out what that belief is. So if it's my team aren't up to this, I've got to take it all on, that's a belief. And you'll sort and perceive your world to make sure they take nothing on. So flipping that around, well, who has the strengths? Who's different than you that could complement you? Who could do that? So flipping that belief to being towards opposed from away from. Mindset's a big one, you know, and we do a lot around a program called Mindset Matters, you know, and in that we talk about the whole self-awareness and I guess the part of emotional intelligence around you and understanding your emotions and the triggers for those. And, you know, triggers for limiting beliefs can be if you're not moving forward or you're not feeling happy and fulfilled. You know, if you're not doing, I have a saying, you know, don't do what you're good at, do what you're good at that you enjoy. So if you actually understand what lights you up, you'll find you'll be able to flip that script a bit more and watch your inner dialogue. Your inner dialogue, you know, you just got to be careful. I've got a client that's named her inner dialogue, actually named it Naughty Nancy, and she laughs whenever she hears this little monkey mind voice. She laughs and it breaks her state. So when that voice comes, name it. Name your critic. Name your inner critic. That's a big one.
Yeah. I think that's really important. And in my book, I've got 3 voices that I have, and it's taken a while to kind of name those voices. And you know, one of them I kind of named it but one of them is actually more dangerous than I thought. It actually enhanced the dangerous one even more during COVID. And so that's really important to be able to pick that up, but also be able to take action. It's already well to be able to identify it, but then what do you, and you can name it, what do you do about it? How do you flip? So naming it first thing, and then how do you flip it? I love to flip the script about that, just to switch it to the other. I replace it with another voice. That's kind of how that's why I've got the 3 voices.
I love that. And if you're out there thinking, oh God, I don't have another voice, the fact that you're even thinking that right now, you do. So you do need to flip it. And I think too, you know, and it's an oldie but a goodie, talk to yourself like a friend. I think the more that limiting belief, the longer you have it, the stronger it gets, the harder it is to break. And it's actually our mindset. It's a negative habit. Negative thinking is a habit, as you know. So, you know, really breaking down what triggers me to think that crappy thing. When does it happen? Who am I around? What are the triggers of it? And then flipping that to serve you and just as importantly, be in service to others.
I love that timing of that too, because I think if you get wise to it, realize how much it can be limiting for you. But if you're a leader, it's also affecting your other people. And I think it shows. And so if you feel guilty about going, well, it's only affecting me, I'm not going to worry about it. Well, actually, it's affecting a team, and that can be a very wise team. There's some of the leaders you and I work with. Well, you know, I honestly think you need to pick it up and be more serious about it. So when does it occur? I love that one, because they do have patterns. I've found they have patterns when they occur, and it's the kind of voice that occurs. You need to pick that up, name it, and kind of work out when it's likely to occur. You know,
and who it occurs with. So you know.
Yes.
I think that's important. And I believe, as I'm sure you do, Rob, we have culture. You know, culture's a bit of a buzzword. It's simply the shared values, beliefs, and, you know, social behaviours of a community. But I think we have our work culture and we have our home culture. And I've just written a whole thing on this. And I think about your loved ones as well, you know, in and out of work, your limiting beliefs could be holding them back and seeing them you know, don't come home as my husband actually came up with. He is a builder and he doesn't get involved in my, you know, my stuff. We sort of work in 2 very sort of different worlds. And he, the other night I said to him, well, what is it when you get home and you've just got nothing left? And he said, well, you shouldn't leave your energy in the lost property box for your family. And I thought that's such a cool way to say it. So that made it into the book.
Yeah, it's very true, isn't it? So it's priorities, isn't it? That,
Yeah.
you've got to have the right energy for the right people and know where, who's the ones that really
That's
benefit,
right.
from bringing that and not letting those people down, as well.
No.
So I know I really like that. One of the interesting things, the question I had for you, what comes first, success or passion?
Passion. Passion to me is a firework, and it's ignited. And if you're doing what really truly lights you up and you have that pep in your step,
Yeah.
success will come from that. It's a bit like, Rob, you hear, you would have had these people over the years, I want to leave the corporate world and just have my own business. And you go, so what do you want to do? I just want to make $1 million and have my own business and not have a boss. It's the wrong way around. You've got to know what that is. And I think find out what you're passionate about, and to do that, think about what are you curious about. Passion and purpose are pretty big words. What are you curious about? I always say to my clients, if you could do one thing a week in your role, what would it be? So for me, it's facilitate. Workshops are my passion, right? Absolute passion. Yeah. So Mondays, wherever I can, I'm in somewhere running a workshop at 7:30, and that sets the tone for the week. Right. I love writing. I love thinking, but I dabble that through at night and weekends. I don't sit in an office all day and write. I just can't. So
I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because sometimes, the passion can be there, but sometimes just because you're passionate doesn't mean you become successful.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can become successful with something you didn't know, and all of a sudden you get passionate about it. So I always find that there's
that's spot on, and then
6 of one, half a dozen of the other, isn't there? That sometimes we get both. I was fascinating on the passion side. It was interesting. I was watching. I don't know if you've seen this movie called Mid-90s. Have you seen Mid-90s?
No, I haven't.
So you want to see it because
What's it on?
It's on Netflix now, I think, or one of the channels. But anyway, it's out. It's actually the first directorial debut of Jonah Hill. So you would have known Jonah Hill.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting for you is watch the interviews about the movie afterwards, because Jonah Hill, his first directorial debut, but none of the actors were actors that were in it. They were all cast from the street. It's basically a skateboard movie, because Jonah Hill was passionate about skateboarding, which is massive in the 80s and 90s. And as he said and they said, well, Jonah, how good a skateboarder were you? And he goes, well, actually, I was 100% passion, 14% talent. Right? Yeah. And he said, I've always loved it. I was never that good at it, but God, I was passionate about it. But what was interesting about it was that they said, why did he pick the subject? And he said that, actually, he went to film school and screenwriting and directing. He never went to be an actor. He actually went to produce and direct. And he said, I've been sidetracked for the last 15 years on his acting career, which has been pretty good for him. But he said, actually my intention, I had to get down. So sometimes there's a difference. And you touched on it a second ago where you said, sometimes there's some stuff you can get paid really well for. Yeah. Right? And you're good at it, but you don't necessarily be passionate about it.
No.
And he said, I was paid really well. He's a great actor. We love him and the stuff he does. But his passion was actually producing, directing, and bringing the package together. And that's what he's done. And he said, when he learned that your first directorial debut has to be something you're incredibly passionate about, because the hours, the intensity, the extra mile you have to go. If you're not, it's just you'll fall over. So I recommend it to you because it is.
I will watch. That might be my reward. I'll watch that Sunday. Enjoy it.
Don't blame me if you don't like it or it's too extreme for you.
I'll let you know. You never hear from me again.
That's right. If we never do anything ever again, I know I'll blame Jonah Hill. That'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool.
You'll know. But I love how you've brought that story in. And I think to what we said before, I think passion can fuel success. But imagine if you have overnight, or so people call it, overnight success, then you can become passionate to have more success. So I don't think it's static. I think it's forever evolving. Yeah?
I think they're both. I think they both feed off each other. And the point is, unless you try something, unless you do something, you'll never know. Like your point about those different career roles, I thought was good too. What have you seen? So during COVID, and where this is going to continue, but I'd like to pick it up. What are some, you've worked with some good leaders. What are, rather than people's names, what has been some impressive leadership things you've seen being done? What have some of your better leaders done that you've gone, that's
Yeah.
really great?
Some have really stepped up in the connection piece.
Right.
Leading and working remotely, they're saying to me they've never felt closer to their teams, which has
Yes.
just been some of the ones that I least expected, which was really interesting. I've had some organisations, you know, even at CEO level, who have said we would never let people work from home, and now they're going back to it when we can.
Yes.
The hybrid model, which I'm a big believer in, which is 2
Yeah.
days a week working from home, as long as there's a crossover where you do see each other.
Yep.
But the biggest thing I've seen, I think, is people embracing this whole virtual platform. You know, there's some clients that are talking to me about Zoom and Teams as if, oh, how good is it? And I'm like, I've been trying to get you to use that for years, you know.
Right.
So they've been forced to embrace it. And the 3 words I think of, Rob, when I think of what I've seen and what I believe we need to be the best leaders we can be in the future, is we need to be innovative, adaptive, and collaborative. Those 3 words, I really believe, as much as COVID's been shocking, you know, and I'm not saying there's anything great in what's happened, but if I look at, you know, what good has come out of it, I think those 3 key behaviours that I believe drive strong cultures have almost been forced into a lot of businesses. And I just hope that they stay, you know, that they bring that in. I have a bit of a model around what are you going to let in that's new? What are you going to let go of that's not working? And what are you going to let be? And I think that's so important as we go into this next normal.
Well, I think that's right. And I think that, you know, you and I both know hope's not a strategy, but I love what you just said then. So I think that you know, you can't do everything. So you have to go, what should we stop? What is working we should do more of, and what should we bring in and make that the new normal? Because, you know, innovations and, you know, innovate, adapt, and collaboration, my God, they are really big initiatives, Renee. They kind of roll off the tongue to you and I. But when you're trying to get that into sort of company, even one of those is, it takes effort, doesn't it? It takes effort to get it in. But what I think we've proven here is that even the most stagnant organisation can do it when you're forced to do it, when there's no choice in, you have to actually move. And one of the things I've been talking about for 12 months prior to this was using Zoom and Teams. If you're in sales, for example, one of the most successful things I saw was, you know, don't cold call or deliver an RFP. You know, do a video with it. You know, say, hey, here's my thoughts on your organisation. I know we didn't have a time to meet. Here's some pricing, but here's some other things I thought about. And we're doing that in a face-to-face dialogue. And I had people pick this up and get used to their camera and jiggle around their laptop, and they'd have a crack at it. But they had such great response because the person receiving it, be it procurement or anyone who just went for a price, went, hey, this is different. These guys actually care because we've got this physiology. And now, you know, everyone's doing it. Now everyone's going like...
Yeah, I know. And I love that you're doing that. I actually did something on LinkedIn at the start of COVID where I did 40 just 20-second videos that I sent to some LinkedIn people that I don't know that well. And I've connected I got a client out of that, but more than that, I connected probably more than I would have in the past with some of them. So
now, they weren't those ones you put on TikTok, were they? Those 20-second ones? That was a whole different channel.
That's a whole different channel. Can't talk about
That's a different audience for that one.
Are you having a cut and an uncut version, Rob? Or?
That's right.
Rob, uncut.
It's all the way. It's all the way. And what are some of the things you've seen that you go, you know, I don't think leaders shouldn't be doing that? What are maybe a couple of things you've seen?
I've seen a few people bury their heads and almost hide at home and literally are still saying to me that, thank goodness there's only a few that are still saying to me, I'm just waiting to get out. I'm just waiting to get out. I'm just waiting to go back to normal. And the fact is, there'll never be normals. I call it the next normal, which is every day.
Yeah, no, we're not going back. Yeah. That's what I've seen too.
Lack of communication, which, you know, is connection. Lack of using technology. I'm a big believer. Technology is the conduit to connection, but don't use the human element. The human element, I should say. So I've seen some not embrace. I'm quite happy to say most of the people I've been working with, and I've been in service to a lot of clients, just, you know, really just supporting them through this time. Most have really embraced it surprisingly well. you know, and I'm going to be honest, as this probably airs, you know, there's a bit of frustration I've noticed this week alone. I've had quite a few people go, can I just have an hour with you? I just need your energy and positivity, you know,
Yes.
and there's not even, you know, so
Same. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, and you've got to give that too. I think that, you know,
I do.
we have to give that. I mean, we're humans by nature, so we love to give.
Yeah.
But I think also on that, you know, Renee, I think we have to be careful of people like us and in our role, and that includes other leaders who are leading leaders, so leader of leaders.
Yeah.
Be careful if you're a leader of leader, because while you want to give and give and give, there's a point where you need to stop. Yeah, you need, and you can be completely drained, and that can affect. I'm loving your husband here. We're going to quote him on this one, because then you've run out of energy for your family.
Yeah.
And your family needs you just as much as your employees do.
Yeah.
So that balance of effort and how much giving you give, make sure you're recharging. And I do that through exercise. And I've done the research on this again. Exercise is fantastic for the mind. It's just taking a bit of a break and re-energizing. But be careful with yourself when you're doing all that giving.
It's so important.
You run out of it, you haven't got it.
Yeah.
You know?
Rob, it's so important, and I'll be the first to say, you know, I've probably had 5 days off since March 13th. And I'm riding on the weekends, and I do go for a run very early in the morning. But a few weeks ago, you know, you've got to look after yourself, and your cup's got to be full. And one of the chapters in the book's The Gift of Re-Energizing, and we talk about, you know, whole self leadership habits, and there's an exercise in there. And you're right, exercise, food, self-care, and a big one, your support network, you know, peers such as ourselves, tapping into people that, you know, you're adding and giving each other value, because you can, you know, there's givers and there's receivers, and unfortunately there's some people that don't give back. And I think you've got to be really careful of your energy and your headspace, not just your time.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Exactly. I was with did a Facebook live with my good friend Lance Piccioni from the Love Me Love You Foundation, which is kind of the hat I'm wearing today. And one of the points that those guys have worked out, they said actually people have pivoted really, really well. They've pivoted their businesses well. They've pivoted their business life well. But what they haven't done so well is pivot their own thinking and realizing that they need to cut time for themselves. They need to be kinder to themselves, realize that the pivot takes time and effort. And so they actually cut themselves some slack. And I think sometimes in Australia, especially, we're such a, you know, we don't do that enough. We're kind of seen as not, you know, especially if I find, you know, it's not seen as we should better cope with everything. We should better do all that. We should leave it. Well, you know, sometimes you've got to be a little more kinder to yourself. And I was saying actually the personal pivot is actually the most difficult one. It's probably the one we've left to the last. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, which is obtainable but not sustainable. And I think, you know, in that pivot, you know, whether you're pivoting your business or not, you know, I've been doing a lot on remote work. We've created an online program, Supercharge Working Remotely. 90% of that program is about the psychology, not the physical side. And when we're not commuting, that's a great benefit. We save time and money, but we work longer hours at a more intense pace. And that's known. I know I am. I know the hour, I'd have 2 hours normally in the car. I would ring clients, but it's a bit of a release. Right. So something I'm doing, which I've shared a few times, but if you're happy for me to share, to start and end the day, I have, being half Italian, I love coffee. I've probably mentioned that. Did I say I love coffee? So I'll have my coffee, and then I'm always dressed for work. There hasn't been one day since COVID I have not been. I've been on a screen most of the day, every day. Yeah. So physiology creates your psychology. I put my runners on. I go out my front door. I go around the block for 10 minutes. I come back in the front door into my office, and I do the same thing when I end the day. Even if I'm working after hours, I still do that. Cooking's my passion. I zone out for an hour and cook, and then I go and work from a different place. And I look at it like boundary bookends of the day. And I think it's really helped me, and I know it's helped a lot of clients. So I just wanted to share that.
That's, you know, it's pretty fantastic. And I got a similar thing from, I don't know, a friend of mine, Lyndall Mitchell, who runs Aurora Day Spa. And Lyndall said there's two parts of the day that you are in control of, the start and the end, right? And the middle part, shit can go down. But she said, really, if you take responsibility, and you've done a perfect example, Renee, which is I am in charge of the start. I can determine how I start my day and how I feel. And at the end of the day, I can determine how I feel at the end of the day and book in it. So I love that. I love that session. Hey, I want to ask you one question. We're going through COVID. We've got a lot of change going on. But if you had to go back in life and you met 15-year-old Renee, what would you tell her? Or what are 3 things you'd tell her about where she was going and what could be in the future?
I was a rowdy 15-year-old, so that scares me going back there. But first one is less is more. I think I've always had, and I totally think I've always had a completion addiction. I have to have things completed. My first book I wrote in 12 weeks out of hours. This one's nearly similar. And I think less is more sometimes, and take things a bit more lightly. I'm such a giver and a creative. So I just see, my big word in life's limitless. So I just see so much potentiality in everything, which I think is a gift, but got to be careful. The other one, coming back to what you said earlier, take care of you. I think I do give a lot, family, friends, and what I do for a living. And I think maybe slow that down. And something I thought of the other day is, you will always continue to become who you are.
Right.
So, when people say, how have you become you? And I ask people that question too. You're you now, but you will always continue to be the next version of you, however that may look, and to be open to that. And I think that opens up your, that growth mindset.
Yeah, I love that. And I always tell people too who obsess on purpose, you'll have many purposes. As you grow and experience and get there, there'll be this purpose to uplift to another purpose to another purpose. So I completely agree. Hey, Renee, it's been fantastic chatting. It's been awesome to connect with you. It's a long time for you and I to get together, but I'm really hoping we'll do more stuff in the future.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. And just give me a quick shout out. Where can people find you? What's the website? What's the best connection?
Yeah, so I might spell it. The best place is we do very active on LinkedIn and Renee Giarrusso LinkedIn, but my website, so RENEE Giarrusso GIARRUSSO.com. And that's the best place.
Yeah, we'll put that all out in the show notes as well, everybody. But big thanks, Renee, and thanks for joining us. And
thank you.
Have an awesome weekend. See ya.
Thanks, Rob.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.